Everybody. I am Sarah Thorson, and Justin, we are in a little different location than we normally hang out. Normally, people find us over on the beef page, but today we're on the dairy page.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a little bit of different change of pace, but some good things. So it'll be exciting morning.
Yeah, yeah. So a couple of members of the dairy team asked Justin and I to visit with you guys a little bit about our beef on dairy breeding program, and I grew up on a ranch in eastern Montana. I'm the beef marketing manager for GENEX. My family has Simmental and Simangus cattle. And Justin, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself?
Yep, Justin Hergenreder. I live just north of Denver, Colorado, right in between Denver and Fort Collins, right there on the front range of Colorado. What's left is still some ag ground right there, but grew up a diversified crop and livestock operation there. My brother still does quite a bit of row cropping, and then we run about 150 commercial Angus cows, red and black both, and then mostly just cow calf. And then we actually started to retain some ownership on our steers and a few other things like that too. So experiment in a few other ways that way as well.
Great. So it's safe to say, guys, that we are not the dairy experts, but we feel like we know quite a bit about beef. So we're hoping to share a little bit with you this morning. And so as we're going through, Justin and I have prepared some things that we want to visit with you guys about. But if you have questions, feel free to type them in the comments, and we will do our best to answer those here while we're live this morning. But Justin, just to start off with, what would be the end goal for a dairy producer looking to use beef genetics as a cross? What's the goal with that?
Yep. So the biggest thing in the dairies that I've been exposed to here, and especially working with Judd and his team from that end, especially on the Gen X side, is just to create more value for those calves. At the end of the day, it's pretty unfortunate in some of the market situations that those dairy producers have been put in. But nonetheless, a Jersey bull calf or a Holstein bull calf, there's no value left in them. So if we can make an F1 cross with some beef genetics from there, we can change the hide color, we can change the internal makeup of that animal. We can add a lot more value to those calves there at the end of the day, which historically hadn't been much for a steer calf on the purebred Jersey or purebred Holstein side.
So let's talk a little bit about how we create that value, because certainly even with a purebred Holstein steer or Jersey steer, those were still going into the food chain. But how can we create that additional value with the cross calves? What is it about that creates the value? Talk to me about the grading process and all that.
Yep. So I guess just a kind of a quick overview there. When those cattle hit the rail, regardless, historically beef historically dairy or just straight beef cross calves, they're graded on two things, and that's a yield grade and a quality grade. So when they are actually up there on the rail, everything's put together. So they're graded on, first would be quality grade. So what they're actually going to do is they're going to rib that steer between the 12th and 13th rib, and then they're going to look for internal marbling there from that. So for you, those of you who kind of don't know that, that's like on your rib eye there, all the little white specks of intermuscular fat. That's a good thing. So actually what that is helping is that's helping flavor, that's helping tenderness, that's helping juiciness. That's your whole eating experience. And so you want that. When you see those choice grades, you see prime grades, especially when you go to your high-end steakhouses. That's what you're paying for, is the quality eating experience coming from that ribeye. So they're going to measure the marbling there. Like I said, I kind of mentioned a few grades there. You'll usually see some more of like your select type carcasses end up in grocery store type areas, something like that. That's actually changing very rapidly across the country. We visited with a few packers and a few distributors that they're actually doing choice and higher from there too. So they are going to rib those cattle there, like I said, to measure in terms of a quality grade. They're actually going to measure some fat thickness there too. And then the other one that they're going to be either discounted or given a premium on is a yield grade. And so that's actually determined on like a hot carcass weight. So that's the unchilled weight of actual pounds of meat after the head, hide, and internal organs have been removed. So generally kind of that 60 to 64% of the actual slaughter weight of that calf from there. Yield grades 1, 2, and 3 being more desirable. So actually what you're getting is a leaner external fat over that ribeye with still getting that internal muscular fat from there. But you are going to start getting some discounts on some yield grade 4s and 5s to where the point where you're probably over, a half to 3/4 of an inch of back fat, a few other things to go along with there. I'm not a grader, but just a quick overview from there. So that's essentially at the end of the day when we get those cattle on the rail is what you're looking to get.
So, and one of the things we've talked about along with that is a lot of times purebred dairy steer will get discounted on the rail just because of the dairy type shape. And you kind of wonder, like, how do they even know that once they take the hide off? Because certainly the grader isn't standing there when they get off the truck. So I'm going to put this picture up here, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about this, Justin.
Yeah, absolutely. So if everybody can see that there on the right-hand side is what you're going to call a beef type. And so you can kind of see on I guess it'd be the left-hand side of that ribeye there, is you can see the angle and kind of the round shape to it. So you can see the center of that ribeye looking more of an oval shape to there versus the beef type on the left-hand side of those pictures. It's very, very flat and very angular on that side as well, too. So like Sarah said, when we actually do pull the hide off of those cattle, and we can't tell whether or not they're black or white, their ribeye is the first indicator of whether or not they actually are a dairy type or a beef type animal. So when we're actually creating these beef on dairy calves or these F1s, what we're trying to do first and foremost is we're trying to get that oval shape back to that ribeye so they don't get discounted on that dairy type from there too. So between that one and then probably the other one that historically dairy calves have gotten docked on is hot carcass weights. So you think about an average kind of size of a Holstein steer, those suckers can get pretty big, and just in terms of frame and in terms of weight, to actually get them to a mature weight that's acceptable to take to the slaughter from there. So when we're talking steers that weigh over 1,600 pounds live weight, you're pushing pretty close to that 1,000-pound hot carcass weight, and that's where you'll actually start to see some docks too. So what we're actually trying to do is combine hopefully those genetics to the point of really creating a calf that excels at the bunk, that's efficient at the bunk, but still comes in at a mature weight that's more than acceptable, hopefully somewhere between that 12 to maybe 1,500 pounds, still keeping our hot carcass weights in the range that they need to be, and then getting that oval shape back to that ribeye.
Yeah, I always think, you kind of wonder, well, wouldn't more meat be better or whatever? But I think the take home is that, these packers that they have the boxes that the beef goes in. It's a set size, and so if it gets too big or it gets too small, it doesn't fit in the box right. Yep. So we need to produce a product that fits correctly. And then also with the shape, you and I talked about, that's the consumers can see that. So you go out to a nice restaurant, you sit down, and you get a steak and I get a steak, and I look at your steak and you look at mine, and how come yours looks different? So we're just trying to create a more consistent product, really.
Yep, absolutely. And like you said, the end consumer and the eating experience that they have needs to be consistent and needs to be of quality from there too. So like you said, regardless if we as producers want to admit that or not, at the end of the day, what that looks like on the plate means a lot to our consumers, to our buyers, and we need that consistent quality product to fit that, like you said, that box beef program. It really sets the bar for it.
Yeah. So, all that being said, Justin, what do you think a dairy producer should look for when they're selecting bulls for a crossbreeding program? What do you recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, I would tell you, whoever's buying your calves, work with those guys and get them the product that they want to pay a premium for. When we started this deal, like we said, at the end of the day, we were trying to add value to that calf. So, if whoever's buying those calves, whatever they're doing, if they like a certain breed, if they like a certain type, make those females that way. Make your buyers happy. That's, even on the beef side, that's what we do at home too. We made our females for the environment, and then we make our steer calves to fit the marketplace. So, and obviously with the majority of these calves hitting the marketplace, see what those guys are after. But if they're kind of up in the air from that, first and foremost, what I tell you from a phenotypic standpoint is color pattern. If you can make those calves as consistent in color pattern and possibly even solid colored pattern, it helps a bunch. And it's the same way, just from a marketability standpoint. So you can see a couple pictures there. The ones on the left, obviously the calf on the right would be more of a Jersey type with a Charolais bull. The calf on the left there, you're obviously kind of your more black nose smoke, would be a Charolais bull on a Holstein cow. So obviously some Charolais examples there, but when you can make those sets of those butterscotch type calves like that, that are super consistent, that makes a really nice set of steers to sell. The same way, if you can make those black nose smokes, obviously what would be ideal is if we could pull that white heart there off of that calf's head. But nonetheless, those black nose smokes make a really nice set to sell too. And then on the right-hand side, regardless, if it's an Angus, a Sim Angus, whether or not it's a limousine somewhere in there cross too, but those solid colored black pattern calves, they make a really nice set of steers to actually go to the feed yard and sell. So, we've actually had the chance, I've seen both of these pins of calves. And, when you walk past, especially that set of steers there on the right-hand picture, for my money, you just walk past them, you wouldn't take them as F1s. It's a really nice set of calves. So I appeal as first and foremost a lot to those buyers to there too. When they take those cattle all the way through, they're still going to have to sell them from a phenotypic standpoint. The majority of them to those packers or those buyers for those packers from that end. And those guys want those solid set of calves from a phenotypic standpoint. So, we get past that. A few other things to dang sure keep in mind from my end would be the consistency in terms of what you're doing and how those cattle are going to actually feed and perform. Obviously, I don't think that we need to be mating, big 6 and 7 frame Holstein cows to 6 and 7 frame Angus bulls from that end. It probably wouldn't even hurt to bring those down just a little bit. So hopefully they complement each other from a frame standpoint. We need to increase the efficiency of those cattle. That's probably been one of the biggest complaints that we've got from a few of the guys who have been working on those calves. We just need to find bulls that make them more efficient at the bunk, but still with that performance too. So, when you guys look at bulls, to keep that in mind, I'd throw all the maternal traits out the window myself for, I guess, lack of a better explanation from that. You guys aren't keeping these replacement females, so it doesn't matter. I'm not a big 1%er chaser, and I don't think that you guys need to be either from there. So I think that if you kind of keep some cavities in check, dang sure work on that weaning weight, work on that yearling weight, work on those rib eyes, some things like that like we talked about, get that oval shape back to those cattle when they are on the rail is probably some things that I'd look at, especially from if we're going to sort these cattle from an EPD standpoint.
Right. And that's I think a really good tip to keep in mind, because you and I work very closely with our beef team, of course, and every year we put together what our beef management guide, our sire catalog, and we put some of those bulls at the front end of the book that work really well for maternal traits, for replacement females, targeted towards our beef customers. And a lot of times we'll get questions from our employees, or our employees will get questions from producers. This bull's the first bull in your beef book. How come you're not selling me that one? And there's a reason why we don't. It's not really a good fit most of the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. They're targeted for two different things. Yeah. So, like you said, not to, go through the whole beef book here, but, for us, for the beef on beef side, we start off with a bull called Justified, who's meant to go out and make cows, super good footed, hard footed cattle, that have the longevity to last a long time and be super productive. And for the beef on dairy side, that's not your guys' goal. At the end of the day, you want these cattle hanging on the rail as fast and as cheap as possible. So we need to be looking at other traits. So absolutely. Very good point.
So it can get confusing because I talk to beef producers all the time, and they're like, hey, can you explain these EPDs to me? And they're completely different than what a dairy producer would be used to looking at for their proofs. So one of the things that we've done, Justin, to help make our bull selection easier is our blended product. Can you talk a little bit about that and what the advantages of the blend product are versus picking an individual bull?
Yeah, absolutely. So the blended product's awesome. I guess I hope someday, even just on commercial heifers or something like that, for the beef on beef side, that we get to this point too. But essentially, we've got a couple different blends, and you guys can obviously talk to your GENEX reps about which ones they are and how many bulls actually go into that. But like, I've got a couple here in front of me. that there's 3 bulls in a blend, or there's even up to 6 bulls in a blend, if I'm saying that correctly, Sarah, from there. But essentially, guys, what that's doing is that's actually helping, excuse me, your conception rates moving forward from there. So obviously that we know that all of these bulls, their semen doesn't go through capacitation at the same rate. And so when you actually inseminate these females, you're giving yourself a higher chance of making sure that you actually do create a pregnancy, just in terms of when she actually does ovulate from there. So we've gone through, we've handpicked these bulls to put together into these blends, and made sure that all of these bulls are of phenotypic quality first and foremost from there. And then from an EPD standpoint, we've all especially kept them at least in like the top 25 percentile for cavities, at least top 15 to 10% for weaning weight, for yearling weight, at least at a minimum top 15 to 20% for ribeye. And so at the end of the day, you might not necessarily know exactly which bull your calf is actually by. But nonetheless, first and foremost, you got that female pregnant. In my opinion, I don't care if it's beef on beef, beef on dairy, dairy on dairy. A pregnant female is making money, first and foremost. So we've got that female pregnant. We dang sure we've got a calf grown inside of her that we know has the genetic potential to hit those markers that we talked about earlier. So the fertility advantage is awesome from there. And like we said, we've got Brad and Cody out there beating the bushes, handpicking these bulls. So all the bulls still fit those marks. They're all still high quality cattle. But we're just trying to give you guys that fertility advantage to give you the best possible chance of getting that female pregnant for service conception.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that that's really important. I mean, we have the data. A lot of people are familiar with our preg check scores, and we've done preg check on the individual bulls in the blend, and then went and collected preg check data for the blend, and the blend outperforms the average of the individual bulls. I don't know the answer why. I'm sure maybe someone in our lab staff does, but I just think that's amazing because an individual bull can have a bad day. He doesn't.
Absolutely.
But this, you kind of hedge your bets. You get your best chance at a pregnancy, which is, like you said, I mean, that's money right there.
Absolutely. So. Yep. And like I said, guys, I would reiterate, 10 times over. I spend a lot of time during the year crossing paths with Cody and Brad, and even in the truck with them, going to look at beef bulls, and we're stopping to look at beef on dairy bulls the same way there too. Guys, GENEX has invested a lot of money and a lot of time into making sure that they are buying the best bulls for your beef on dairy cross calves, and it cross breeds too. You kind of flip through there what the offering is. We've got different breeds to fit everybody's different scenario. Hopefully everybody's calf buying experience from there. So regardless if it's an Angus, if it's a Sim Angus, if it's a Simmental, if it's a Charolais, I know that we've actually gone out and we've got some Akaushi bulls for it. So we've got a wide range, but like I said, we've invested a lot of time and a lot of money to give you guys those options to hopefully gain you as many premiums as we can at the end of the day too.
So Justin, genetics aside, because that's what we spent a lot of time talking about that so far this morning, what are some other things that producers can do to make sure they're capturing that value from these calves?
Yep, absolutely. I'd say first and foremost, herd health. That's a big one. And, like I said, and I guess I'm going to talk in a lot of just generalness here to the point of whether it's beef on beef, beef on dairy, or even dairy on dairy calves from that matter. Guys, if we can't keep them healthy, we suck all the profit out of them. So herd health is huge. Obviously consult your veterinarian from that end in terms of your vaccination programs from there too. But talk to those buyers. I know that we work with Superior quite a little bit too from there in terms of which vaccination program they do have to hit from there. But don't be afraid to question some of those other stuff. There are premiums to be gained for all natural cattle, for NHTC cattle. I know if you kind of watch some of the marketplaces, there's some China and EU qualified cattle. So there are a lot of other premiums that, truthfully, from the beef on dairy side, it's actually been very enlightening to talk to a lot of these guys. I would be willing to bet that probably 95% of you as dairymen actually already have this information, and you're not being paid for it. Yeah. We talk about agent source. The records that you guys have and already keep are awesome. And so you might as well get rewarded for them. So if you can prove, when that calf was born, what vaccinations, if any, if that calf had, I know that you guys, a lot of the dairy producers that I've talked about will tell you when they got colostrum and how much colostrum. from there. So, like I said, hats off to you guys. Your record keeping is awesome. But don't be afraid to talk to a guy, or like I said, contact your GENEX field man there, and we can get you in touch with some buyers there that'll tell you about those premiums there too, and hopefully get you a couple extra dollars for some of those other classifications that those calves have probably already qualified for, and you just didn't realize it probably. So.
I think that's a really good point, Justin. We want people to get paid for what they're already doing, and there are a lot of just our profits to be had from that. I mean, it's nothing out of the ordinary for most of our dairy producers.
Yep, absolutely. So
Justin, what about if I'm a dairy producer and I, want to look at crossbreeding? Can GENEX help me market my calves? Is there anything like that available?
yep. So to a point, obviously we're a genetic company, so we're not necessarily in the business of buying calves ourselves. We're in the business of trying to make you the best quality calf that we can. But don't get me wrong, we do have a lot of other people out there in the marketplace that we are working side by side with to bring those buyers into those operations. So I know that we've worked, and I've worked with a lot of those TSMs, a lot of with those those GENEX ICs, to get them in touch with those buyers. And guys, those buyers will jump in the truck with you. They'll go out, they'll work side by side with those calves. I've seen those guys either make an offer right there over the hood of a pickup. They can sit in the office, or they can say, hey, in 6 months, we'll start buying here. So dang sure get a hold of those guys. I know that Judd and his team have worked very, very hard to get some of those buyers lined up from that. So just contact your local GENEX, whether or not it's an IC, whether or not it's your TSM, your ASM, whoever. But nonetheless, they do have the resources to get a hold of those guys who buy those calves, to get you in touch with them. So hopefully, like we said, we can get some more of those premiums paid that way too. But yeah, they do have a list of guys that are looking and wanting to buy those cattle.
Right. Well, Justin, anything else you want to add? Any other thoughts that we haven't talked about yet this morning?
Yeah, probably the other one that I'd leave a lot of you guys, especially as producers, with right now is you guys have a lot of marketability sitting in your hand and the opportunity to make a lot of money. Truthfully, in my opinion, like we said when we talked about not much value in just a straight black and white or a Jersey bull calf, but as soon as we can get a different hide color on them and make them an F1, and we go from I don't know the exact numbers, but let's just say a $20 calf to a $120 calf. We've invested a lot there. But at the same token, though, too, guys, is don't just make these glorified black Holsteins, or any other color from the standpoint there, too. Let's just not get willy-nilly with them and say, oh, I got her bred to a beef bull. She'll be good enough. Visit with us. Visit with whoever, your GENEX rep is there. Like we talked about, we've invested a lot of time, a lot of money in these bulls to make sure that they are the right ones to you, that make sure that they are genetically superior to gain you those premiums. So like I said, I think you guys have a lot of cards in your hand right now, and the opportunity to make a lot of money and put a lot of these good cattle on feed and gain some of those premiums, but make sure that they're still a quality calf and they're just not a so-so calf.
Right. Yeah, Justin, I think that's a good point. We all know beef producers that sell their calves to the same buyer year after year after year, and it's that quality and the relationship, and they know how those cattle feed. Yep. And that's the same kind of thing that we want to give to our beef, our dairy producers, to those kind of relationships.
Yep. And some of that might be new to some of those folks coming forward. But I promise you, those relationships last.
Yep.
And the guys who come in and pay a premium for those calves will pay it year after year when they have a good experience with your cattle. So, and I hate to reiterate and just kind of beat that dead horse, but we all know bad news travels faster than good news. And so keep that in mind too. But like I said, those guys will come back time and time again for those cattle. They will pay a premium for those cattle when they know what they'll do for them too.
Well, Justin, thanks for joining me this morning over on the Dairy Page. It's been a lot of fun having this discussion with you. Want to thank everybody for joining us. If you are tuning in late and didn't get a chance to ask your questions, just feel free to leave them in the comments, and Justin and I will kind of try to keep an eye on them and come back and answer questions throughout the day if there are any. But thanks so much for joining us.
Have a good day, everybody.